I'm Almasi, and it's my great pleasure to be here with Tori, creative entrepreneur. So first of all, let's talk about your outfit because like I see you repping yourself, everything, the shirt, the bling. So tell me a little bit about that.
So, well, first of all, Tori, for those that don't know, I'm Tori. I am a serial entrepreneur, I guess, if you want to talk in that sense. I'm known mainly as Tori Lens, as you know, as a photographer, videographer, creative director in that sense. But I do have multiple businesses, as you've clearly mentioned. I've got my jewelry brand, which is called Statement Piece, as well as other brands that I have as well. But yeah, thanks outfit. Printed by a black-owned brand called Love It Tees.
Shout out to them.
Shout out to Love It Tees.
So what's it like day to day, like in the life of Tori? Tell me a little bit
day
about
to day,
that. Yeah.
As
like,
a
what's that like?
serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Every day is completely different, literally. I like the fact that there's freedom. There's freedom there's freedom for me to do what I want to do. That sounds very like rebellious, like I just do what I want. But like essentially day to day is completely different because I've got multiple brands and multiple things I do. It's different. One thing that is constant every day is emails, which is the bane of my existence. Yeah. But I've got an admin, so I've got someone that does my emails for me, which is like the best thing ever in life to do. But yeah, it's just every day is different. If I've got a shoot, if I'm creative directing, if I've got orders coming in from clients or something like that. So every day is completely different.
So it sounds like you just love the life of that flexibility.
100%.
But like, do you like get stressed sometimes with all of that like workload? Like, how do you manage that? Like, how do you deal with that?
I think it definitely can be stressful. I think anything you do can be stressful, if I'm honest with you. Even if you have one career and you're doing one thing, every day, like I'm sure being a doctor is like a whole 7 years, it's stressful. Yeah. I think everything can be stressful. I think it's just, I think it just depends on your how you balance life, how you balance the things you want to do. I'm still in a state of figuring out what that right balance is, and I don't think there's any right way to do it. You kind of do what works for you. Do you know what I mean? But I've tried to, at the moment, I'm trialing setting a specific day for specific tasks, if that makes sense. So I have like one day for Tori Lens stuff, I have one day for Statement Piece stuff, and I have one day for like other stuff. Yeah. And I also have a thing that I do every Thursday called No Phone Thursday, where I'm not reachable on a Thursday, and 95% of people in my life know that. So if you call me or anything on a Thursday, you won't get a reply unless it's an emergency. So I think it's allowed me to kind of like have that downtime, me time to do what I want to do, because I'm accessible in so many spaces. It allows me to actually have time for like myself. And I've been doing it for like 4 years, and it's like the best thing ever in life. Like I recommend everyone to kind of do that.
That's cool. So like, tell me a little bit about the journey. Like, how did it all begin? Like, where were you before that time, before you started all your businesses and you got to this point?
So my journey, I'll try to go quick because it's kind of long.
It's all right, take your time, you've got time.
So my heritage is Nigerian. I'm Nigerian. Both of my parents are Nigerian. And my parents, split up when I was like 9 or 10 or whatever. I've always been a creative. It's always been in my bones, in my soul as a creative. And I, went to secondary school. I changed secondary schools a couple of times. And there was a point when I basically had, I guess you want to say like, I don't know if misunderstanding is the right word, but like a break from my mum. It wasn't necessarily a positive thing. Yeah. So I ended up basically going into care, and I was, my godmother, who's actually a white woman, became my legal guardian when I was just turned 16. She became my legal guardian. So I moved in with her in Catford, South East London. I moved in with her in Catford, and the whole college, going to college, that was completely different because I was meant to go to a different college, ended up going to Croydon College, met a lot of awesome people that I still talk to today. And we did, I joined a dance group, we had a dance company. It was really cool, like all the creative things I wanted to do. I studied dance and drama, performing arts essentially in college, that's what I studied. And it was a completely weird time because obviously being of Nigerian heritage, and that's all I've ever known, to now being in like a white, like a white woman's home, essentially. I grew up with her, I spent summers with her, like I've known her my whole life, but to actually live in that environment where like, I call her mum as well, do you know what I mean? So to live in that space and to be black in that space was a very weird experience, if that makes sense. Even though I've known her my whole life, it was kind of a weird experience in that space. We had a breakdown in communication, if you like, and I ended up homeless after that. So I ended up being homeless at the age of, I want to say, how old was I? 21, I think I was. Didn't have a great relationship with my mum at that point. My godmother, who was essentially my savior, didn't have a good relationship with her. But in all the things that was happening, I still had my creative. So I was still winning awards, I was still teaching, I was still doing like teaching dance and drama, I was still doing all these things outside, but my home life was not like stable, if that makes sense. So I was in different hostels, like moving around. Eventually I got in contact with a charity called Centrepoint, and I ended up getting my own flat. I just fast forwarded a lot of stuff there, but I ended up getting my own flat. And just in the whole time, I think creativity and expression was the one thing that held me together, as well as having a way to express myself with dance, with choreography, and doing all those things in spaces where I was recognized as me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I never, in all the spaces apart from, certain instances with my godmother, who I said, like I said, a white woman, there's only certain instances of her where race or anything came into it. But with all the people that I worked with, connected with, created with, it's my people, innit? We're all black, we're all, do you know what I mean? So I never once felt out of place. It felt very much like home. My friends became my family. They still are till today. Do you know what I mean? Even though I'm one of 6, I've got like 5 other siblings. They became my family, and they still are now. And essentially that is kind of how I went on or created or went on this journey of creativity with myself till then. Didn't go to uni. I was part of a youth art centre called Second Wave, which is in Deptford. I did an apprenticeship with them. I became a qualified dance and drama tutor. And I just carried on being creative, fast forward to now, doing photography and doing all the things I did before. So the journey has been like this, all over the place. But the one thing that's kept me grounded and kept me is having people that look like me and that have a similar history to me, as in like, black Nigerian females around me, even Caribbeans. I never realized until I went to college that the black experience for like a black female wasn't specific to being a black Nigerian girl. I actually thought that, because Nigerians is what we all go through, but you go to college, you meet Caribbeans, you meet other people, you're like, even people that are like Indian, like heavily cultured, you're like, oh my God, this is the same thing. Like you guys, oh my God, kind of thing. So it was nice to have a space to kind of talk about things and kind of like talk through things, knowing I wasn't alone in that sense. But yeah, the whole time my whole journey has been creativity. It's pushed me to where I am. Super long story.
No, it's a very interesting story. Thank you for sharing that, because
worries.
I think it's so important to like just be honest and like authentic about your journey, and not, because I think a lot of people just see the outside, the exterior, and be like, oh my God, like she's so confident, she's there, she's doing all of these things, but they don't actually know your story and what you've been through to get to where you are. And I think that's what's needed, is like that appreciation of hard work. Like you've actually worked hard for that, despite all of those things.
Right.
And I think I was gonna ask what was your driving force, but you kind of said that, like surrounding yourself with people and like having that representation. So my next question to you is, do you feel like, knowing what you know now and seeing the creative industry as it is now, do you feel like there's a lack of representation?
Yes, I feel like we're kind of in a weird but cool time. I feel like the past maybe like 1 to 3 years, there's been an influx of black creatives really like being unapologetic. I think that's the difference. I think there's always been black creatives since the beginning of time. They've always been doing what they're doing, they've always been like, shadow banned or whatever in certain spaces. But I think now we're in a time where people are really celebrating their blackness, being black, and being black British as well, which is a completely different experience to being black American, black Canadian or whatever. It's completely different. And even where you grow up in London as well. I think that's a whole thing. You could be like from Birmingham, it's a completely different, do you know what I mean? And I feel like we are really like celebrating that. We're really standing in it and owning in it and owning it. So I feel like there's a shift. There's definitely been a shift. But we are still underrepresented in so many places and so many fields. Like even for myself, being in the photography scene for the past 8 years, I still go into rooms and go to events and shoot stuff, and I'm the only black person, not even the only black female. I'm the only black person. Do you know what I mean? Like before I even put my face on my Instagram, everybody just thought I was a guy. Everyone just was like, oh, yo, bro, I love your stuff. And I'm like, thanks, I'm a cis. Like, like I'm not a guy. Like, why do you think? But every space I've ever been in, everyone just assumes before seeing my face that I'm male or maybe even not even black. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, what? How are you? And I'm like, what? So the fact that people's automatic thought is to go to a man or to go through someone who's not black means the narrative hasn't necessarily been changed, because you're automatically thinking, oh, this is a photographer. They're doing, I don't know, whatever I'm doing, shooting smoke grenades, and you automatically think this is a white guy? Like, why would you think it's do you know what I mean? It's like, it just means that you haven't been exposed to anything other than that. Do you know what I mean? Because anything I'm doing isn't specific to my gender or my race. It's not specific to that. Do you know what I mean? To anything. So we are still underrepresented, but we're on a good road. I think we're in a good space. The fact that we're having open conversations like this, the fact that, you know, we can talk and connect with people that we wouldn't have before. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there was a time, especially I say my day and age, like I'm super old, but like in my day and age, when I was in like school and college and stuff, like there was this like almost unwritten weird thing where like you would be in competition with another black girl. It's so weird. Like when I think about it now, I'm like, what is that? I know that's come from like generations, but I'm like, what is that? Why if I see a black girl that's living her awesomeness, I see her as competition. I see her as like, oh, I don't want to chat to her. But now it's like, you know, got people saying, girl, I love your hair, I love you. You know, you're having conversations with complete strangers where 10 years ago, we wasn't doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we've come a long way, but we've still got way further to go. Yeah,
that's so true, honestly. Like, what would you say, like, what advice would you give to like a young black female creative? Like anything, any advice, no matter like how small, how big, anything that you've learned that you'd say, this is what you need to know to be able to be confident in those spaces, no matter like if you're the only black girl or black male, because everyone needs to be represented. But yeah, what would you say to them?
My advice, it's going to sound super cliche, but to be yourself. I think what we've learned, especially as black people in general, what we've learned is to make ourselves small in places so we don't stand out, so we don't cause, you know, parents say, you know, don't shout, you know, you're in church saying be quiet, or you go out and they're like giving you the evil eye if you're like too loud. Do you know what I mean? We've been conditioned to be small, make ourselves small. We need to own the spaces that we're in. If you're in a space and you've gotten to a place, you're meant to be there. And I'll give you an example. So I was shooting Justin Bieber a couple of years ago in the O2 Arena, and the thing about me is, which I think is a good thing, but can be a bad thing, I can be quite naive. I don't go into space and think, oh, I'm going to be the only. I'm just like, I'm going to do my job. I'm not thinking black, white, I'm just going to do my job. It's not as I get in there and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm the only, okay, kind of thing. But I was just shooting Justin Bieber. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think I need a special camera or whatever. I went with my little Nikon, my little 50, like little tiny thing. So I'm sitting there waiting, you know, in the back, and all these other people are coming, and there's like, you know, white women and white men, and I'm like, okay, cool, you here to shoot? They're like, yeah, and they're kind of giving me like side eyes, and I'm like, okay, because they've got their cameras were like, I kid you not, like 4 foot. Like, I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be, maybe I'm not prepared for this. Maybe I'm here, I've got to do it, kind of thing. And even in that moment, like I felt the intimidation of like, you shouldn't be here, you're gonna have to talk, whatever, I'm gonna go and shoot. And I went in, and funny enough, my friend was actually one of the people that was taking us in. So we went in and we shot, and I stood in the pit, and you kind of shoot whatever. And the pictures were sick. And I just thought, you guys looking at me sideways with your big old cameras. Like, I did it with my little 50, and they were sick, and they got printed and everything. Do you know what I mean? No one ever said to me, oh, what camera are you shooting with? What lens? You get the picture, you do what you need to do. No one said, oh, you're going to be the only black person. That it's just, you kind of just go in and you kind of do it. So I feel like my advice would be like to own the space you're in. Like, don't try and make yourself small. You're there for a reason. There's a reason why you're there. Whether you think it was an accident or whatever, like, you are there for a reason. You don't have to be overly like, I'm black and I'm here. You don't have to do that. Like, being yourself is being black. Do you know what I mean? Whatever that is to you. So like, being in that space and doing what you're paid to do, your job or whatever. If something relevant comes up in something you want to talk about, then talk about it. I don't feel like you have to like, you know, be small. And I think that's what's happening now in the world. Like, you know, like we have women saying, I'm being so audacious. It's like, I'm just owning myself, not even just my blackness. I happen to be black, but I'm owning myself. And I think the best advice is to just not shrink, like own that space, take up space, because you belong there. You're meant to be there.
It's true.
So.
I was actually having a similar conversation with my friend today, and we're talking about like, you need to value yourself first and see your worth, like in what you do, especially in creativity. Like, if you do something, that's your craft and that's what you do, that's yours.
Yeah.
And no one can take that away from you. So
100%.
Before anyone tells you, oh, like, you're not good at that or whatever, like, they can't tell you if you value yourself and you see worth in yourself. So I think I definitely like relate, and yeah, that's such a true thing.
It's so funny you talk about like value, because I feel like that is one thing we don't do, like, or we don't do well. Do you know what I mean? Like we seek, what's the word? We seek validation and permission from other people to be in rooms, to be, oh my God, is this good enough? Can I be, do you know what I mean? And in doing that, we adhere to rules that aren't for us. There's rules in the world that ain't for black people. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can't do the same things that, you know, our white counterparts or whatever do. Like, we can't, just because of the way the world is. But it doesn't mean to say that that's a restriction. It's like a way, you do it your way. You do it, you know what I mean? You kind of, there are some hoops you have to kind of like jump through to get to certain places, but that doesn't necessarily mean you negate your blackness or you search for approval or permission to be. Like you said, like, you create a piece of work. It's your work, you've created it. You don't have to be like someone else. Like, this is what you're doing, this is your craft. So.
And again, like the same thing, like being in uni, having white male lecturers, like, it's like you seek validation from them and their perspective, their opinions are different.
Completely.
And that's fine, because everyone's different and they're entitled to their opinion.
Right.
However, when you don't like sort of relate to someone, they don't understand your culture, they don't understand why you do things a certain way, it can be a bit difficult. And I'm not saying like, oh, it should be easier for us, because do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't need to be, because we work hard just like anybody else.
Yeah, I think it's also a lack of understanding. Because I think anywhere you go, there's going to, I say anywhere you go, most places you go to, there may not be someone who looks like you, but it's like having an understanding. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of people that, through working with Ravensbourne, like through being a sessional tutor with Ravensbourne, I've connected with people that aren't black, but they understand. Do you know what I mean? They're like, okay, I understand, you know, this, or I understand that you know, the struggles of being black or whatever. So they can be allies, if you like. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like the experience becomes difficult when you have someone who doesn't look like you or come from a background that you can relate to, whether it's Asian or, you know, whatever, when they are committed to misunderstanding you. Like, when you have, you know, like a white counterpart or black, whatever, in a room, in a position of, what do you call it, authority, and they're committed to misunderstanding you. Like, we spoke about your name, right? People that are like committed to not wanting to learn your name. Do you understand? Or saying things like, oh, can I just call you Rebecca? No. Can I just call you Becky? Can I just call you Tate? No. This is my name. Do you know what I mean? The same way, like, I saw something that said, I can't remember where I saw it, but it was like, it was a message to like black people, and like, don't let someone shorten your name, because they say Schwarzenegger and they say like Swarovski's crystals. Those are not hard name things, they're not easy things to say. So, like, do you know what I mean? Don't let them like downplay like your name. Like, they can and they will. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like the difficulty is when you come across people that are committed to, I'm not even going to try and ask you how to say your name. I'm just going to call you T. I'm just going to call you, you know what I mean? It's like, no.
And I shouldn't have to shorten my name to make you feel comfortable saying it.
Exactly.
Like, for me, I've had this conversation so many times, but like I've never really spoken about it because I'm just like, okay, I can't be asked. Like I'm just gonna tell them, call me Macy, for example. And then I'm like, no, actually, I shouldn't have to shorten my name for you to be comfortable. You need to say my name how it is because my parents named me that
is your name.
For a reason, and I carry my name with pride and worth. And like especially for me anyway, like my dad passed away, and like that my name carries sentimental like values to me. Even because like exactly like how my dad used to, like, for example, tell me, oh, your name means this, you need to carry yourself like this because that's your name. It's you.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And then it's like I'm actually thinking like deep in these things, like I shouldn't let people short my name for anything. Like they need to learn it, and there's just a lack of respect if I have to say like 10 times and you keep saying it wrong, it's just like you're not taking the time to learn how to say it properly, and it's not even a hard name. So I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't understand.
Like 17 syllables in it. It's
literally, I don't understand it. So yeah. So I wanted to go back to the conversation about you working with Justin Bieber. Like
not with, shooting.
Sorry, shooting. Yes, let me just...
Yeah, people be like, oh my God, you met him? I did not meet him, no.
Yeah. No, I did my research, right? So I saw that you, I don't want to mistakenly say it, but you also did something to do with Willow Smith as well.
Yeah, I shot Willow Smith.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to ask, like, what's your, like, dream person to collaborate with, like, in the future?
Do you know what's so funny? I love this question. So I used to really want to do work for like Nike. You know, like I feel like growing up in South London, like Nike, Adidas, like all that kind of stuff. But then I got to a point where I was like, why do I even, you know what it was? It was almost like a validation thing. Like, oh, I forgot to, like, I'm not a super Nike fan. Like I do, you know what I mean? But I'm not like, oh my God, I only wear like, no, I don't. Like I wear what I wear, like what I like, do you know what I mean? But I realized I was like, oh, I wanted to work with Nike mainly because it was like bragging rights, almost like, oh, and I just thought, I don't even want to work with Nike, you know. I want to be Nike in the sense like, I want you to want to be like, oh, I don't work with Tori. Exactly. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be, oh, I'm looking for, and then because when I get there, I'm like, okay, I did it. Okay, now what? Do you know what I mean? I'm like, what does that mean? What does it really mean kind of thing? So I don't have anyone, like, this sounds really like, you know, whatever, but I don't really idolize people like that because I feel like people are people and humans are humans. I feel like for me anyway, I can be quite, what does my sister say? She says, I have an addictive personality. I don't know if that's a thing, but I have an addictive personality where like, I'm like, oh, I'm really on things. So if I get on someone, I'm like on it. So I'm like, I can't really feel like I want to be like a fan of somebody, if that makes sense. I can be a supporter and like certain things, but there isn't anyone I really want to like work with, if I'm honest with you. I just want to work with brands that are cool, people that do stuff for a reason, that aren't like super money motivated, and I want to like, you know, own the world. I wanted to work with people like that. But one thing I always do, which is like super random, but one thing I always do, because I have conversations with myself in my house.
Does it know everyone?
I mean, I don't know. I have conversations every day. I have conversations with myself, and I always imagine I'm being interviewed by Oprah. So if I ever got on the Oprah show, that would be
Oprah, if you're watching.
Sick. Oprah, if you're watching, you know, 20 years from now, I'm gonna show this clip and be like, "This is what she said." But I would love to be interviewed by Oprah. Like, I feel like Oprah was probably without me knowing, the first like Black woman that was like self-made or self-sufficient. Do you know what I mean? That was, you know Oprah's history about, you know, being cancelled by these, you know, organizations, and she can't be on TV, and now she's a quintillion, billion, zillionaire. Do you know what I mean? Doing these things. So there's one person I'd really love to like talk to, not necessarily do work for, talk to. It would be Oprah. But I'm going to be my own Oprah. I'm going to have my own show. But like, I would love to have a conversation with Oprah. I think that'll be like so sick. But I don't really have anyone that I want to work with.
You're literally answering all my questions for me, because I was going to ask, like, who's your role model? Like, who's someone you look to for inspiration? I guess you spoke about Oprah.
Okay, so Oprah is definitely someone I like without knowing, you know, because she's in the world. Like, even if you were in the 80s, you knew about Oprah. Do you know what I mean? The people that inspire me are my peers, Dion Reed, Sebastian Till, two people that are like in their industry, in their game, doing what they're doing. There's an artist called Tiny Man, he's an artist, Shay Lingo, like Chloe Dean, like people that are like my peers, like that I've grown up with, that are in the creative industry, like being and doing and killing and smashing it. Like they're my inspiration because they're close to me, because I feel like if they're doing it, I can do it, whatever field I'm in. So I often feel like, you know, like you've got like the Will Smiths of the world, and everyone's like, I'm inspired by Will Smith. I'm like, kinda. I mean, I don't know him, and he's like really far away, and he's like American, and I can't really see the journey clearly. But people that are in my vicinity, in my world, in my circle, even if they're a little bit out, I'm like, oh, I'm 2 degrees away from, you know, Shaka, for example, as an artist. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know these people, I can have a conversation with them, I can be like, hey, you know what I mean? They're close to me, and they're winning, and they're doing, and they're black, and they're British. So I'm just like, I can do, if they can do, I can do. So my peers are like my biggest inspirations. Like when they win, I win. When they win, we win. Yeah, because it's like, that means you can do it. That means I can do it too. Do you know what I mean? And you're being a representation, which means we're all winning. So I just feel like, yeah, they're my biggest inspirations.
Honestly, like, this is a little fangirling moment. No, honestly, like, the first time I met you, I was like, oh my gosh, like, Tori Lens, like, I didn't know anything about you, but just, like, the way you carried yourself, I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's what I want to be like, do you know what I mean?
I
So I think, yeah, you're exactly right. I think the closer people are, and like the more you get to know them, like it inspires you, because even like you're inspiring me right now. I'm just like, okay, I'm in my 3rd year of uni, like I can do this.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's really cool.
And I think it's good to make connects, like we've connected, do you know what I mean? So even if you want to be like, oh, hey, can you, like people, what's really interesting, I feel like, especially with Black British culture, is we have this, or maybe it's my generation, I don't know, but we have this understanding where if you ask for help, you're like being a beg. Like, oh, no, why are you begging? I don't want to feel like I'm begging. Like, but it's like, I read something the other day, it was like, most people are willing to help. Not everybody, don't get me wrong. People might see you as competition or blah, blah, whatever. But like, most people are willing to help. Like, I think the people, especially people that I know and I'm around, like, we feed into each other. Like, me giving you advice doesn't take anything away from me. Me saying to you, oh, connect with A, B, C, D, doesn't take anything away from me. In fact, it makes me look better. Do you know what I mean? People, they misunderstand. It's like, by giving someone a connect, you think you've lost, but actually you've won. Because if you're a great person and I've connected with a great person, they're going to be like, oh, I take Tori's word. And you're going to be like, I take Tori's word. And it just kind of builds. So even if I don't get anything from it, my reputation is, you know, reputation is kind of what you need in life. Do you know what I mean? So it ends up being actually good for the person who made the connect. And people misunderstand that. So yeah, I feel like reaching out to people, random people like you don't know or you admire, like just reach out and be like, hey, and connect.
I think that's such a kind-hearted thing, and I wanted to go back to what you mentioned before about you want to work with brands that kind of have a purpose and do things, like just do good things. I saw that you work with Accumulate. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
So Accumulate is the art school for the homeless, because I was previously homeless. The founder, Maurice, she connected with me on Twitter when I was on Twitter. And she's like, hey, I saw your interview in The Guardian. Like, do you want to come and give a talk? And I was like, yeah, I'll interview in The Guardian. Dropping it in there. Just a little, you know. So, yeah, The Guardian, like, the newspaper was a whole thing for like 3 years. I was like really like pushing these stories. Anyway, so she found me, she connected with me, and I did a talk for her. This must have been about 4 years ago now. And now I'm on the board of directors for the company, which is awesome. I teach for them. And yeah, we started back teaching in real life yesterday, which was really cool. But yeah, I love the fact that it's an art school for the homeless. Like, I'm creative, it's arty, I get to give my skills and teach skills and guide people to whether they want to do it professional or not. It's been great to kind of do that. And that's not even just like Black people, that's just anybody. Do you know what I mean? Like, understanding that being homeless or coming from a place that's difficult, as in not having a home, not necessarily being on the streets, but like being in a hostel and stuff like that. I've gone through that, and it's so freaking hard. Like, especially if you don't have anything outside of where you're at, it's really hard. So be able to have a school, a charity like Accumulate, it's life-changing. Like, it's literally life-changing. Not even just for me, I'm like, I wish this was about when I was, you know, going through this. It's amazing. But to be able to be a guide or a connect to people that have and are going through it, it's incredible. I love that, and I love working for Accumulate. 4 years in, and I love it. It's amazing.
That's great. how can, if someone wanted to help or support this, like how could they do that?
What, Accumulate?
Do you know, in terms of that.
Accumulate.co.uk. Just go on the website and just
cool.
have a little dig, have a little dive. Yeah.
You do so much.
Yeah.
Like
I do.
Too much.
Never too much.
I'm joking. No, but like with your business, taking it back, like statement piece, you do Tori Lens, all of these different things, like taking it back to the basics, what's 3 things you wish you knew, like starting your businesses or business?
3 things I wish I knew before I started in my business. I think as a creative, you need to understand your back end. So I think a lot of creatives, which isn't a bad thing, they get into like, oh, I'm an artist, I can make money from this. And they just kind of go out there and just no plan, go, which is what I did. No plan, just I'm gonna make money, I can do it kind of thing. But knowing your back end, i.e. your finances, your, what you need to cover yourself, like your ins, your outs, like actually documenting every single piece of money that goes in and comes out. I think the easiest way to do that is have a separate bank account for those things. People don't really tell you that in the beginning. They're just like, oh, while you're starting, just use it. Like, no, you will get confused and you'll be stressed. So have your back end as on point as much as possible, like in terms of your money. Another thing is there's help. Like people assume there isn't help. There's help, especially in this country, UK. There's like government help and stuff. So when I decided to do my business, I went self-employed and I registered to be self-employed. There's certain benefits you get, like tax credit and certain things you get if you're not making a certain amount of money. So help you survive, like while you're kind of like doing your businesses. And it feels, because it's like government, you kind of like, oh, it's kind of like scary. But they're there to help you. So my friend who registered self-employed maybe like 4 or 5 years after I had, she was like, oh my God, Tori, I'm gonna do my end of year. And I was like, call them. And she's like, oh, I said, no, actually call them. She's like, I said, no, call them. I remember I was saying to her the year prior, I was trying to figure out all like my bank statements and whatever. And I couldn't find something. And the woman was on hold for 40 minutes. And she was like, it's fine, I'm still here. I was like, she's like, I'm still here. I was like, thank you. Like there's help, like they wanna help you, they're there to help you. So don't feel like you're going at it alone. So even just with government, .gov websites are like there to help you. And also reach out to people that are doing it and have that advice. The third thing I would say, which is actually the business end of things, is to create the work you want to be hired to create. I think that's something I've learned like now in the past maybe like 2-3 years, because what happens is you go into an industry or a field, and it happens in life. Someone tells you, oh, in order to be, I don't know, this great artist, you kind of have to do this art first and let people kind of see that. And I thought that's the wrong way to do it, like, because you end up in a box that you don't want to be in. You end up doing things you don't want to do. That's not to say you shouldn't take that work. Like I did a talk at the photography show recently, plug, and I was saying like, for me in the beginning, my bread and butter was from doing headshots. And I don't do headshots, I don't care about that. Do you know what I mean? But that was my bread and butter. Like that was what kept me going. And I was doing creative stuff like over here, but the headshots was funding me able to do my headshot stuff. Even if I couldn't pay someone, I'm like, I can give you travel or food or whatever. But what happened was, because I was doing headshots and they were looking good, I started posting headshot stuff. Then people were coming to me for headshot stuff. And I was like, no. What's happening? And they're like, no, because, and I'm like, okay, people only see what you present. People don't dig deeper. Let's be real, they don't. So even though you're over here doing headshot stuff, you don't have to post that or share that or anything. That's just how you're making money. You post and share the stuff you want to be hired to create, because that's when people see. They come to you, oh, you do this? Oh my God, you know what I mean? And you attract your clients that way. And eventually it tips over. It tips that you're getting more of what you want to be and less of what you don't. And it kind of tips. So I don't think there's anything wrong with like actually doing the stuff you don't necessarily want to do, if it's kind of keeping you afloat. But just create the work you want to be hired to create. Like that's the biggest thing I could say, like more than the third thing.
Can we talk about your press ready folder as well? Just tell us about that, because I just love that. I was like, damn, I need to do that.
So I've got this thing which I call press ready folder, and it came about because Well, as you know, there's a lot of press things I do, and people was like, "Oh, can I get this picture?" Even like this, like, Tori, do you have a folder of like? And I was like, "I've got a folder." And so basically, in the press ready folder, it's a Google Drive folder. I have a selection of headshots. So if they want to put a post on anything, whatever, they have headshots. I have a selection of like work that I do. So my work that I don't mind people posting and sharing or whatever. I have my portfolio, if you like. I have a bio. And then within all of those things, I have links to whoever took the photo. For example, 99% of the pictures in there I took even my own headshots. But there's a photo in there which is absolutely beautiful that my friend like took of me. So I'm making sure everyone gets credited. But it basically just means you have a collection, a folder of your work, your portfolio, your headshots, and your bio. So if anyone comes at any point for any reason, you are ready to say, "Yep, here's a link." And you send it to them, and it's accessible anywhere. It saves a lot of headache when you're trying to do, you're like, "Oh, wait, this happened." Because usually with press, the reason I call it a press ready folder is because with the press, their time spans, whatever, are very short. They're like, "Oh, they message you on Tuesday and they need it by like Wednesday or Thursday." You're like, "What?" Like, yeah, you're scrambling. So it's like, if you have it already there, you don't have to worry about it. And also update it regularly. So I've got a note in my diary every 6 months to just update it. But usually when I do a shoot or something, I just update it anyway. I just got into the habit of doing it. But yeah, like, it's literally the best thing that I've ever done. Like,
yeah, I think it's such a good idea because I think sometimes people aren't prepared. They're like, "Oh, that's never gonna happen. I'm never gonna." For example, you've been on The Guardian or you've been interviewed or whatever you did. Like, people were just like, "Oh yeah, that will never happen."
Yeah,
so
exactly.
why do I need that stuff?
Right.
But you actually do. So I think that's
It's
such
true.
a good thing to have.
Yeah. I think if you're putting yourself out in the world, even if you're just documenting your journey, people are going to connect with you. So even if you think, "Oh, that might not happen or might not happen yet," be prepared for it. And I'm also an advocate for putting things out in the world that you want to happen. So if you want that to happen, you being ready is almost telling the universe, "I'm ready. If anyone comes, I'm ready." Like, it's almost like you're putting that energy out into the universe, out into the world. So just be ready, man.
I believe in that so much, honestly. But going back to like how you juggle everything as well, like has anyone ever told you like you can't do so many different things? Like, you need to just stick to one thing, Tori. Just choose photography. That's it. Like,
my whole life, if I'm honest with you, people will say, "You're doing too much." "Oh, Tori, you're doing too much, man. Oh, you're doing too much." What is too much? Like, if I feel like if I can handle it, and handle it doesn't mean I've got everything under control. Handle it means I'm not stressed, or I'm not, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not driving myself into the ground, which in the beginning, I can't lie, I was. I thought that like, in order to be like seen or worthy, I had to be like putting in like mad hours, working to stupid o'clock in the morning, which is not a healthy thing to do. Do you know what I mean? But how I deal with now when people say you're doing too much, I just say, "Cool, thanks." I don't even entertain it, because majority of the time when people say things to you, it's not you, it's them. They're projecting. They think, "I could never do that." So they're saying, "You can't do that." But actually what they're saying is, when they're saying you can't, they're saying I can't. It's actually a projection. But juggling things is, juggling is probably the right word, but juggling things, I feel like you as you go in, like, I'm a jump deep end type of person, as I'm sure you could tell. Then I'm in and I'm like, okay, too much now, okay, kind of thing. Like, by doing, like, do you know what I mean? If someone tells you, like, I tried to do the whole, I'm only going to do photography, and I was miserable. I was so miserable, hated it, hated shooting. I was like, "Oh, everyone just says I should do one thing, so let me just do one thing then, because everyone's saying you'll be successful if you do one thing." Do you know what I mean? I was like, this is dead. Like, I actually felt dead. Like, inside, I felt like, why am I punishing myself?
Exactly.
Like, I love
it's your
doing
life
this.
As well.
Do you know what I mean?
No one else should dictate that.
This
and
is it.
Write your own narrative. Like,
100%.
you need to do what you want to do.
You just need, it's trial and error. You need to figure out, okay, maybe I can't do 3 things at once, but I can do 1 and then go to the next and then go to the next. Or maybe I can do 3 things at once. Or, you know what I mean? Depending on what your goals are in life, I could be doing 1 thing that's a career and 2 things that I'm passionate about. The other 2 things don't have to be businesses. Do you know what I mean? So I just feel like, you just have to know, and you're only going to know by doing. No one can tell you, oh, 3 things, no one can tell you. You have to just go for it and like know, kind of go through the journey and know yourself. One thing I was going to say before you ask me this question, we were talking about something that I'd seen on Instagram that was like, don't tie yourself to a person or a building or a community or a company. Like, tie yourself to a mission. If you know what you're trying to put in the world, what you're trying to leave the world with, that will guide you where you need to go. It doesn't necessarily mean that you stay in a company for 10 years or 1 year, because you know what your mission is, what your overall goal is, you know what I'm trying to put out in the world. It will take you to different places, and you won't feel like you're being flaky or you're getting lost, because you know the goal. My goal is to empower 50 black females. That might be your goal, your overall goal. How am I going to make this happen, and how do I make my money while I do it? Do you know what I mean? And I think once you tie yourself to a mission, like, this is what I'm trying to do, you won't be steered going different places. And people might say to you, oh, you're like, cool, thank you. I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm here. Do you know what I mean? But to a company, to a person, those are things that you can't control, things that are gonna, do you know what I mean? So that's one thing I've learned, like literally as of recent, like, tie myself, what's my mission? What is my overall mission in life? Like, what encompasses all the things that I do? For me, I only just realized that, and I think for me, it's empowering the 7-year-old Tori. It sounds crazy. Like, I think about like my inner child, as you can tell, like, I think about my inner child and I'm like, what would she have wanted? Yeah. And in reality terms, that's like empowering black girls. That's what it is. Because like my 7-year-old self was a black girl. Yeah. So I'm like, in everything I do, that's in underlining like everything I've ever done. And I didn't realize that. I was like, right, every single journey I've taken was to like help 7-year-old Tori.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful thing. No, honestly, like, not even a joke. Like, it's such a beautiful thing, because I think sometimes we forget like our childhood dreams and what we actually set out to do. Like, and I think being in the world where you're sort of put in this box and you're told, no, you need to do this, you need to do it this way, you need to go to school, you need to, go uni. Like, there's so many different pathways in life and in education and where you end up. Yeah. And if you don't fit into that box, you're like an outcast almost. And I think even like you telling me about your story and about, how you're independent, you're flexible with your time. For me anyway, those weren't the expectations of me growing up. And like my mum is supportive, but at the same time it's like, oh, like, are you sure you want to go down that route? You know what I mean? Maybe you should go over there. So I think that's such an important thing, like remembering why you started and also remembering your values as well, because like you said, when you know that stuff, you can't be steered one way. Like you know exactly why you're here, what you're doing, why you want to do it. So I think that's important.
There'll be multiple ways to do it. Because you're not tying yourself to like, I need to do this in 5 years, that in 10 years. It's very rigid. Whereas if you have a goal and a mission, you will find multiple ways to reach that goal. There isn't just a one way. Do you know what I mean? There's people that are going to uni at the age of 50 rather than at the age of 17, 18. Do you know what I mean? Like, so there may be a different path that you take. One thing you said, you touched on about like culture, like in your household. It's so funny because in my household, I was like, essentially, I was called the black sheep of my family. I'm the middle child. I don't know if that's a thing. It is a thing. Let me not lie. Being the middle child is a thing, okay? And I was called the black sheep of my family because I was the creative one and not academic, if you make sense. But I think there's power in someone creating a narrative for you. Because even now, my mum will tell you, oh, she doesn't read. And I'm like, I do. You remember like me when I was 7, because in school I didn't want to read that book, so you think I don't like to read. And it's a narrative that you grow up and you think, oh, I'm just not academic. I just say I'm not academic, I'm like, I am academic actually. It's just a narrative or a position or a time in my life. And because you have, parents and teachers, they create a narrative about you because it's easy to do that. But it's like, actually, like, no disrespect to parents and whatever, but it's like, no, actually, I'm discovering myself and I'm knowing myself. And actually, I am academic, I don't just learn that way. Do you know what I mean? And I think when it comes to like culture and stuff, I don't think there's anything wrong with going against what your culture is telling you, because sometimes it's not always right. I think we kind of tie on to like, oh, it's my culture, that's what we do in my country. And I'm like, awesome, that's not good though, because it didn't help you. It didn't, you look at your parents and like, okay, you did it and it's not, do you know what I mean? No disrespect, but it's kind of that. And it's like, actually, like, as much as I love being Nigerian, I love my culture, but my dad and my mom's super supportive, but like my dad will be like, oh, so you want to do fashion? Okay, so is fashion going to pay the bills? Yeah, it will. It will. So you want to do pictures? Is pictures? Yeah, it will. Do you know what I mean? It took my dad so long, like, to actually realize. Yeah, now he's like calling me and wanting. I'm like, oh. When I met Jermaine Jackson, yeah, like literally it was so crazy. That's when my dad was all like promoting me. Oh, look at my daughter. Don't do that.
They're waiting for the bag to drop.
They're waiting for the bragging rights. Don't do that. Don't do that.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
like, literally, like when there's no money like when you don't have the money or the accolade, like there's no physical evidence. They're like, oh, so what are you doing again?
Working. Like, so how are you making money? Are you surviving? And don't get me wrong, it comes from a good place. It comes from a place of like them wanting you to be comfortable and be able to, you know what I mean? But there's so many avenues, there's so many things, social media and the world and us. We've opened up so many doors. Do you know what I mean? There's multiple ways to make a living and still do what you want to do. Do you know what I mean? And not disrespect your culture at the same time.
No, of course not. Of course not. No, that's what I was going to say as well, that like the world is changing and like we have to change with it. We have to like remember, like give our parents grace as well, because like they come from a different time, a different era where things weren't really accessible like that. And it's like, I'm Jamaican, so my mom growing up, she didn't have those things. So she's obviously come here to give me a better life and give me and my brother a better life. So like I understand it comes from a good place, like you said, but they don't get it. They're not living in the time we're living in, like in the culture and understanding like there's so much available to us. If only we recognize that we actually have that potential and not being like, oh yeah, like we can't do it. Like you actually can, because
it's a narrative that's come from like so long ago, isn't it? Because even we're talking like 40, 50 years ago, which is not a long time. There were certain things that people weren't allowed to do. Like you couldn't do this. So especially with our parents and stuff and our grandparents, have come from a time when that's the narrative that they know. So they're like, yeah, I know you see these celebrities, but you can't because you're, do you know what I mean? It's like, actually I can be. Do you know what I mean? And even celebrity and being known or whatever, like that construct is completely different to what it was 20, 30, even 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it's a completely different construct. So yeah, it's quite interesting though, because I feel like we're so like aware that I feel like it's almost our responsibility to show our parents. I feel like you can get kind of frustrated and be like, they don't get it, and kind of like shut them out. And I get it, but it's like, I feel like it's almost our responsibility to show them that we can. Not necessarily prove yourself, because that's a whole different thing, but show them actually this is a possibility. Like, did you know what I mean? Not until, and I never did anything I did to prove to my parents that I could do it. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. But my dad seeing me, like live my life and being like, oh my God, like actually she's doing this. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, and maybe I can be a bit, I can get a bit in on there. Like, do you know what I mean? Like be braggy as, African parents are, like super braggy. But it's almost like by you being, and you actually being your authentic self and being your most awesomest self in whatever space that is, you're teaching your parents, actually, this is what it is now. Do you know what I mean? And that's not, I'm still understanding where they've come from, like you said, knowing and understanding that, but also knowing this is also like this is also now my narrative, this is my road now, and this is what I'm gonna do. I understand what you've come from and I get that, and it's good to know that and be aware of those things, because some spaces are still like that, but actually being like, I'm carving my way. And the same thing that will happen for our kids and our kids' kids and our kids' kids. It's gonna be different, at that time. So. And
I don't think it's only about teaching our parents, but teaching the young ones coming up as well. And if you have kids as well, showing them that like your mom, your dad did this. Like they made their dreams come true, and you can do it as well. So I think it's about empowering like everyone. It's not just your parents. So for sure.
I do have a question for you though.
Oh God. I don't like questions.
What do you do? And that's a really like loaded question. I don't like people who ask me that. But what do you see yourself as, and what's your aims for like the next year? Because you're in your last year, right? Yeah.
I study advertising and brand design. So it's actually a conversation that I've had with myself so many times. Obviously, I'm not out in the industry yet. However, from what I've seen, I don't know if it's something that I really want to get into. I know that I want to be in the creative industry somehow, or just like create my own path within that that place.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it just won't fulfill me. Like, it has no purpose. Like going back to what you were saying about mission, like my values don't align with that, and I want to do something to help others. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna do something. I know that for a fact. And like, it's always been my dream since I was younger, like to be an entrepreneur. And like, again, like in a weird way, and it seems so silly, but this is kind of like a dream come true. Because I mean, like, I moved here when I was 9.
Yeah.
So like,
from Jamaica?
Yeah, from Jamaica. So I kind of have like 2 different perspectives. So I understand what it's like to come from a place where you don't have you don't have resources, you don't have those people that make it big, if you want to call it that. Do you know what I mean? So like, someone like a young girl from Jamaica might be looking at this and thinking, like, I know her, that's Almasi, she's on in an interview with someone who's do you know what I mean? But from here, it's like, I feel like in a way we have privilege. It's like, this is not anything big, but it is and I understand that, because where I come from, like that journey, like I understand, like, okay, I'm actually doing what I want to do and what I set out to do. But yeah, like creating a business or being an entrepreneur, and somehow that's the ultimate goal. But essentially just like remaining true and honest to myself and my values, like that's what's important to me. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but
when you say entrepreneur, what do you mean? Like a business owner? Do you mean someone that's just doing
business owner? So just like, I think more so like integrating my creative skills, like we were speaking about before, using my creativity to help people.
Right.
There is a project that's in the works. It might take a couple years or something, I don't know, but it's like my little baby, something that I'm gonna keep working on, hopefully. And I hope, you know, one day you'll remember this interview and I'll be like,
what do you mean? Like this, Almasi, this is history. Like, this is historic. Like, we just spoke about, Ravensbourne's never done a student interviewing someone else. So this is historic already. Like, you've made history right now already. It's already set. Like, when you look back on your life 10 years from now, wherever that's going to be, 5 years, 1 year, 2 year, you're going to be like, oh, I did that. Do you know what I mean? And like, I believe that everything I do, and I think everyone should think this way, everything you do is historic. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like, I shouldn't say, well, my dad technically was born here, but like, I'm first generation Nigerian in, like, you know what I mean? So I'm like, everything I've done, even being born here, is historic for my lineage anyway. Do you know what I mean? So everything you do is historic. Like, not to say, like, not to play it small. Like you said, I don't know if, like, say it, be it, own it. Do you know what I mean? Because you're here, you're gonna, 10 years and your kids are gonna be like, oh my days, that's great grandma. Oh my, do you know what I mean? Like, great grandma. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just gonna be, that's what it's gonna be. And even if, you know, your kids don't see it or whatever something happens, like, people that are born today, in 20 years they'll be 20 and like see it. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it takes like for us to kind of have these open conversations, and this isn't something I've necessarily done in a confinement of a university or in a educational construct. I've never done this like this before. Do you know what I mean? Like, open forum. So for me, I feel like this is amazing. Like, usually it's like independence and different people, and it's like, it's kind of like audio, that conversation, but these are conversations that aren't being had in, you know, organizations like this, and it's freaking historic. Like, own it. Like, you hear.
I know. You're giving me all the confidence, and hopefully I can, you know, sap some of that energy.
Take it.
But honestly, like, it's so true. I think I do need to be a bit more. Just grab that.
It's a journey. It's not like it's not like something that happens overnight. It's a journey. Like, owning your greatness.
Well, that's all we have time for. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation as much as we have.
It's been great. Thank you for having me.